Hey, everybody, it's Matt Fowler from Doorify again with another episode of our podcast. I think we're version 100 and something. I'll have to come up with the count, but we're been doing these for a while. And today we have Steven McCloskey with us to talk about an event that we had on March 11th that we're going to go through and talk about today. We've got all sorts of interesting things that went on March 11th, and it kind of rolls up into a way to talk about our list pulse report that has come out, and we want to share that with everybody too. But first, Stephen, tell us a little bit about Stephen and how we ran into each other to pull off March 11th.
Sure, yeah. So I've been in real estate for just over a decade now, and I moved to Raleigh or the Raleigh DMA about just over a year and a half ago. And I did an event at the 1000 Watt Summit last year
Mm.
where I met Britt Chester, and we've been in contact ever since. And he spoke very highly of you. And I think he liked what I said on stage. I was talking about AI and some of the products that I built in my past. I've been in real estate for over a decade, and I was the chief product officer at First Team Real Estate for many years.
Mm.
And over the past 2 years, I went on my own, and I've started helping other companies, large brokers across the U.S., strategize and use AI and prop tech to move the needle. So Britt thought that we should meet and have a conversation, and we did, and it led to this.
Yeah, so Britt's a good friend, and we met and talked about AI and I don't know how to get the attention of my subscribers of 14,000 subscribers. And you guys, I mean, you guys watching, you're hard to get in front of. You have a lot going on, and I understand that MLS doesn't show up every day with actionable information. Like you're a top producer, you get newsletters from us about training classes you'll never go to. And, I understand that. Try not to waste everybody's time. So I met Steven, and there are some interesting things happening at MLS that I do want to talk to everybody about that I do think can move the needle, even for top producers. So we had enough, personal hubris to invite the top 100 producers by sales volume in the whole market. And, it's a lot to ask those guys to come down and give 2 hours of their time to us. We're not finding you. We're not talking about CMAs or something. We said, look, Stephen, what can we offer these guys that's meaningful, won't make us look like a bunch of idiots that night? And maybe it's information that will let them sell their inventory faster and for more. So
Yeah.
that now that changes I think that changes the tone of the conversation. And we got a bunch of people, 36 confirmed. I'm showing the dashboard that Stephen and Andrea and I worked from. It's a Claude dashboard that Claude AI produced that looked at the invitation list that we built and managed. And there's $3.2 billion in sales volume year to date 2026 in the room that night. And that's a lot. That's most of the sales in the marketplace that occurred. And we had those people in the room. So tell us a little bit about that night, Stephen, and how it went. And I guess we've
Yeah.
got a few to kind of kick that off. When we opened it, there was some surprise.
Yeah, so when we were discussing the event and trying to plan out, okay, how do we keep the attention of agents? We knew that we had to gamify it somehow. We had to offer them rewards for participating as we went along. And that's exactly what we did. We framed it in such a manner where agents in exchange, there's the data exchange, right? So in exchange for your participation, we're going to reward you. And we had to make sure that it was valuable enough that they would stay engaged. And I think we cracked the code on how to keep the room's attention, Matt. It was a 4 session event
Mhm.
where we displayed the listing life cycle. So from pre-market all the way to, the first 30 days on market, and then how to identify when a listing stalls and how to revive that stalled listing. And I was a bit nervous after the first session because it went so well. And
Mhm.
all the agents were so engaged. And so when we released them to get some food and drinks, I didn't know that they would come back and still be engaged because I done these sessions before with top agents.
Yeah. I mean, they had their note takers out. They were asking me questions. I was, when I was out standing near them, When can I get this? And these are kind of operational questions. Like they already saw the benefit of it. Now, how can I put
Yes.
this into my spreadsheet?
Yeah, and when they came back, they were equally engaged, right?
Mm.
So, I think it's just the perfect timing for this because we started off with the corded stat that 46% of agents turned over last year. And, we're in a destabilized market, and top operators are trying to see around the AI corner right now. And they know that it's there and they need to integrate and they just don't know how to. I think you're giving them something digestible, something that they can really plug into that gives them an edge, right? So,
I guess that was the thing. Was there a particular we released these 4 particular things and allowed for prop tech startups to tell their story as part of that narrative that night. Was there a particular, I don't know, point that you think connected well with the audience?
yeah, I think there was a couple. So, part of the event, we packaged the stats that we were going to show and some of the insights that we had from your Doorify Momentum Index. We packaged that within fun quiz questions. So, the first question we asked the room was, what day of the week is the best day to go live on the MLS? And only 22% of the agents got it right. So, we started with that. And then I think that triggers something, right? And within an agent, okay, so this is unique. This is data that is actually that's actionable. We told them what day of the week is the best day to go live, and 78%
They
got it.
haven't seen that before, right?
Yeah, and and I think displaying the real time participation on screen, so we're actually showing the agent's answers, and them seeing, okay, 78% of my peers didn't get it right. It's okay for me to keep engaging. I don't have to have all the right answers. The second question, only 28% got right. The third, only 25% got right. So we asked 12 questions and then we were showing a leaderboard, right? So the winning agent of the night only got 5 answers correct. So we were giving them insights that were novel and digestible. And I would say that the pin drop moment was during the agent activity correlation report. So showing agents how to analyze the first 7 days on market, but before that, we told them why the first 7 days are most important, and most agents know the beginning of a listing is the most important. But when they find out that, like, between 60 and 75% of all activity on their listing happens in the first 7 days, they didn't know that. That's significant. I think that's more significant than most agents realize. You have to get the first 7 days right. And then showed them correlation with, you call it professional contacts, or I forget what you
MLS hits. MLS hits.
MLS hits, right. So there's correlation to if your listing's gonna sell above list price, you can directly correlate that to MLS hits, right? So if you have 3 plus MLS hits consecutively for 7 days, you have a much higher probability of your listing going higher or selling above list price or at ask.
I think that's really the important point just to put a finger on that real quick, Stephen. It's the context, right? So we're able now to tell you because of all of the signals that we have in our data, we can tell you just by pulling back from it that some data columns or signals always move together and
Mhm.
some always diverge and some are always precedent to an event. If you look at closed sales below mean days on market, one of the things that's correlated to those is MLS hits or professional activity inside the MLS. This makes sense. Buyer traffic on the portals might just mean it's a cool house. Professional traffic inside the application apparently is means that somebody's more serious and it's more correlated to an action happening, an offer or some activity. And you can know that because you can see that which ones aren't and which ones are looking at this correlative ability that we have now. And the data I don't think exists anywhere else but the MLS. Like
No.
all the brokers have their kind of window into it, and some of them are enormous, no doubt. But we have traffic from all of the major portals or engagement metrics from all the major portals showing solutions, lock boxes, as well as these inside the application signals.
Right.
And now that we're monitoring those, that's really what is it's just changed. We're sharing those back with the subscribers. First at this March 11th event, and now as of yesterday, through our new labs program, is available to any subscriber to Doorify to go in and look at a report on their listing that will give them the property facts, yes, but also all of those signals, and very importantly, in context with the listings that it's competing with out there on the internet. Maybe share, I know Andrea's given us these questions, Stephen. Of course, we're off,
Mhm.
as I knew we would be, but share some of those things that you think are most actionable. I've got a couple that kept showing up in the advice. You know, if you look at your listing and you compare it to the listings that get the most traction, what's different about the high flyers in your particular listing?
Yeah, absolutely. The data was clear, and we framed that into one of our questions. We said how many photo changes occurred for the top listing because we analyzed the top 100 listings according to their performance, their DMI performance. And we were able to find a lot of different nuggets through that, but it was 192 photo changes,
Yeah,
and agents were blown away. They
yeah,
had no idea that you can well, that you should do
right,
that, and, the
right.
narrative rewrites on the MLS descriptions, and
That the public remarks that you don't just fire and forget. Like
correct.
you need to think about how this property sits related to the competition and make sure you're talking to the cohort that's the likely buyer.
Yep,
One that popped out, I recall, Stephen, was a lot. There was an older house next to a ton of new development, and you could buy a newer house for cheaper all over the place, but none of them had point 0.6 acres. So, you know, you better be writing those remarks to somebody that has a dog or a Jeep or something and wants, you know, a little more land than you're going to get you know, a new build.
well, the data showed that the top engagement was with land and a mobile home.
Right, right,
People
right.
were
Consumer engagement.
the consumer engagement data. They were looking for homes with a lot of land with a mobile home. Those get the most on the Doorify MLS, the most engagement.
Yeah,
So,
that's. I mean, I think that's just surprising. That's a. I guess that's revealing all sorts of bias that the viewer has, that I
yeah,
had, and that's the whole point of this. Maybe that it takes some of that kind of cultural knowledge and reveals it, but also maybe skewers some others that you thought were true that aren't. I
yeah,
know I thought that the more complete a listing was, the more fields you filled out, the better it would perform online. I've been saying that for years.
yeah,
That is not true. Okay. That is,
yeah,
especially on the bottom end of the price spectrum, the farther down you go, the less true it is.
yeah.
So you can over describe. I'm inferring now, but you can over describe a property in the bottom fifth. You can load too many photos. You can fill out too many fields. You can make the remarks too long. And this is the kind of advice that we were giving them that night. Take us back during the 4 steps that we gave them that night.
Well, I was just gonna say real quick that after the second session, someone from your staff came up to me and said that a top agent that they really respected said, "I've never seen this kind of data before. This makes me look at my business completely different." And I think they were like $100 million producer or something like
Yeah,
that. And then you also had, new builds there, and one of the things interesting with the new builds, the data, they need to work 6 times harder to get the same amount of views that a single
that's right.
family residence has.
Their properties get 1/6 the engagement of
Right.
resales.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was news to me too. I mean, I built a tool the other day, Stephen, in using Claude Code because I'm just experimenting, and it pulls all the photos that are putting in. So I got this stream of all photos that come into the system, just kind of scroll across my dashboard, and there's so much new construction,
yeah,
and it's all a white box room, right? It's
exactly.
it's that's what it is. It's that's not staged. It's not anything. It's a white box, and there's just like my whole screen's full of drywall. So that's not compelling to click on next to a property that's, you know, that's got stuff in
Yeah,
decorated.
they have to get better at visualizing. One of the things that I noticed with there's one agent that outperforms all other agents with their listings, hands down, not even
Mm,
close.
mm.
And I think you know who they are. I'm not
Yeah,
gonna say
yeah,
one of the things that they do on The third photo is a AI visualization of the second photo, and the fifth photo is a AI visualization of the fourth photo.
Right.
And this is the agent that also is constantly rewriting the narrative on the description and had the 192 photo changes.
Yes,
So,
this person's actively working this stuff, and
oh,
it's not just a, a static set of information.
right.
It's constantly evolving, and that's the thing that continues to get it out of the doldrums. What was the stat? 60 something percent of the listings are in the bottom 20%.
It was 70,
Uh,
wasn't it? Wasn't
it's
it?
a big number. It's a big number.
It was
Most
like
listings.
73 or 71% of all listings are still on the.
Stale, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, that's something the MLS never tells you, right?
right.
The MLS will tell you if you put it in wrong, or if you put it in the wrong zip code, you get a fine.
Yeah.
But we're not going to tell you that what you did isn't working anymore, and you need to do something if you expect to sell this thing at that price.
Yeah, and my point with sharing that was these new builds, these new construction operators, they can learn a lot from that, right? Okay, so how many of them, I mean, you're starting to see more and more of them use AI to visualize, okay, what the room could be, but they
Sure.
don't do it enough, and they don't.
Well, yeah, and apparently now we have kind of a baseline, and we know that they've got a long way to go to get similar engagement. I mean, maybe they could argue they don't need it because they are approaching half the sales volume,
Mhm,
right? Those things are selling. Where they don't have longer DOM in the system.
right. Well, back to
Well,
this,
they do. Resell sell faster by a bit.
yeah, but going back to that 71% of all listings are stale right now.
Right.
I think the one of the reasons that agents were so engaged is because their listings are stale as well, right? So we held up a mirror to their listings and indirectly their marketing KPIs. And for the first time, these top producing agents, they saw their performance benchmarked against other top agents in the entire market. So it may have been a bit humbling, maybe I'm wrong, but it was, but we gave them the answer, right? We gave them, okay, this is what you can do about it. And I think that was one of the reasons they stayed engaged.
Yeah, I think, well, that's the thing, right? Now that you've seen these numbers, how do I bring this home to make my ROI better? That hook, come down to level 7 rooftop bar, and we'll tell you things that will help you sell your listings faster and for more.
Yeah.
Now now maybe we're partners in this, and they see that, our guns are pointing in the same direction, not at each other. We really can help them market their properties better and just know more. MLSs have not captured what, these are consumer preference signals or engagement metrics, things like how many emails that are sent out of the MLS system are actually opened. Can we report that by price range? Is that going up or down?
Mhm.
That ability's always been there, but because the MLS has always been kind of a lowest common denominator thing, no one it's not cultural to collect that data. We started collecting a couple years ago in our own data lake project, so now we have comprehensive information about engagement signals from the very first internet impression all the way through to showings.
It's
And
amazing.
yeah, and we released a number. Another one that just comes to mind, Stephen. It was 159 million impressions over the last, I think it was 90 days or something like that, or maybe longer than that, but over the last period. And that's what crunches down to 17,000 closings. So
Sure.
from 159 million, there was like 70 million actual page views, 470, if, as I recall, 470,000 physical showings of properties during that same term,
Mhm.
and then resulted in that 17,000 closing. So one of the stats that I heard was the average listing gets something like 28 showings prior to closing.
Mhm.
That seems like an enormous number.
That is an
Um,
enormous number, especially
but
since
that's
the data
average,
is on average, they get 144 views,
right?
right?
Right.
And
That's a
Mhm.
tiny number.
Right.
That's
Exactly.
because most of them get no traffic,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
What was the bulk of them got less than 150,
Right.
right?
Yeah, the majority, and then you need 655 views to get a lead from the syndicate typically.
Right. That ratio popped out.
Yeah. So,
Yes, so those are great examples of numbers that are on the new. They started out being called the listing health report. That's evolving into the Doorify momentum index that you described earlier, which is really a way to look at the. I think there's around 13,000 actives right now, but we just put them in order and we say, look, there's the number one that gets the most hits, views, contacts, showings, all that, and
yeah,
all the way down to number one, the lowest one. And
right,
we express that in terms of a ratio or a percentile. So you can take that back into your learning model, back at your office, and ask that question we asked earlier. How are my listings different than these top performing listings? And that's going to let you get yours out of the doldrums down there, probably by active photo management, active narrative management, and of course, price.
right,
Overpriced properties, no matter what you do to them, don't sell.
sure,
So testing that price, there's a lot of pre-listing conversation in the news these days about how you test a price, and different brokerages do it different ways. At the MLS, we want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to buy a house when it comes on the market. You know, if somebody's always wanted to live on a certain street and they just drive up and down that street all the time, hoping a house will come for sale, and they stick notes in the mailboxes, and one day they see a sold sign. They are going to wonder, like, who knew about that besides me? Is there a special club or group of people that gets to know about these things that I don't? Maybe you're in a previously marginalized class of people and you have nefarious thoughts about what may have caused that. Maybe it's just, people want to sell to their neighbor or their friend or whatever. It's the seller's right to do that within fair housing guidelines. And
mm,
we just believe in transparency, right?
right.
So a
So,
property list for a crazy number, we want to be able to tell you that that's 40% more than is maybe
mm,
appraisable, right? Um,
right,
Stuff like that, just to give you context to help you return the most to your agency and of course to the seller.
absolutely. So there's a couple things that I wanted to drill down on. The first is the data shows that the median days on market actually goes longer if you do pre-marketing. That's one of the
Yeah.
interesting that we found.
That data is so thin right now that it showed it was 60 something percent longer, right? The
Yeah,
marketing time, but that's pretty narrow data. But that's the only thing we actually can say today is
yeah,
that, look, we have that, and it takes a good bit longer to sell those houses. And I don't know about the net return. That data is still floating out there. Like, do they, it takes a little longer, but do they net more? We're still analyzing those things, and that's just going to be our role for our subscribers watching the podcast. You can just expect Dorify to report on how different paths to market work out for
mm,
for the seller, and I think that's part of our role again, is to just report what happens. In certain zip codes and price brackets, if it turns out that those sell for more than properties that are generally marketed, then we'll report that too,
right.
of course.
Yeah, of course. During the event, agents kept coming up to me after the session and saying, "Hey, how do I apply this to my area, my price point, my zip code?" And what I love about what you're presenting the agents is it lets them do that, right?
Right. Right. It was specifically gives them, and I'm not showing it on my screen. It's just our static invitation analysis there,
Mhm.
because all of it's confidential. Right. So, you know, I've got an adjacent screen up where I logged in as the agent who has the house next door to me listed, and it has the advice that you and I were talking about before we started the show. It's showing you a chart that shows that it was listed and you got all that traffic in the first week as you were describing, and then it falls off so rapidly.
Yeah.
And in those moments, we're going to be proactive talking to the listing broker about, we have an alert that we have a property sliding into stale. And we think that's information that you'll want to hang out on the dashboard for a minute and see what we're saying about ways to make that better.
Yeah. So your interface bridges the gap by it. So number one, it transforms the raw data into actionable intelligence, but it does it through, you said context, right? Contextualization, does it through correlation, and then also the natural language, right? The conversation. So contextualization, correlation, and conversation. So it doesn't just provide the raw numbers, it provides like, and to correct me if I'm wrong, a rank against the 21,000 or 17,000 active listings. And this immediately tells an agent where they stand per listing. And then you can correlate this to specific areas. You can correlate it to like specific agent behaviors, like views per day, or to days on market and sales price. And then they can actually talk to it with like their Claude MCP, because you're gonna have a direct connection to Claude, correct?
Yeah, I think that's probably something to describe carefully here for the podcast, and it's exactly as you just described it, Stephen. We've released some data at Doorify, and it is primarily the engagement metrics. So we have, how many times a particular listing has been seen on the portals, how many times you've clicked through from the search results to look at the listing detail page itself. A bunch of those metrics are available in what's called an MCP server or model context protocol.
Mhm.
And it's a little technical, but when you're inside Claude or ChatGPT, it's really built for Claude. ChatGPT doesn't have native support for MCP servers as of March 25th anyway. But it's a way to connect your Claude or AI tool in the same way that you would connect Google Mail or Exchange. There's a connector for it. And you go into the settings, into the connectors, and you add a new connector, and we give you a URL, like, www thing that you paste into that box, and you log in through FBS. So
Mm,
we have three vendors. FBS holds our source of truth, which lives in a database, and our data hits that as the source of truth. So people who authenticate to FBS to access this data, you have to have an FBS subscription. So Paragon people will want to add an FBS subscription at least until Ice Mortgage Technology comes out with their version of this access. So
mm,
you sign up for Flex, they will give you access to this special server, and there's data coming from Doorify and data coming from the property database. That's listings, and who has it listed, all the media, the documents, and all that stuff lives over there. You would install ours alongside of it to have access to the impressions, the clicks and opens, and that Doorify momentum index.
mm. Okay.
And we know that's complicated. So
Yeah.
we're walking everybody through. I would just invite people to send an email. Support at doorifymls.com is fine. It'll get routed to the right person. If you're interested in accessing MLS data through AI, there's a right and wrong way to do that. And if you're uploading it into free models, you're hereby notified that you're a violation of your licensing agreement. But it's not that we don't want you to use it. We just want you to use it in a way that's protected. So
Sure.
we'll walk you through that. And there's a survey out at my.doorifymls.com to get some more information about how to help people with AI.
Sweet. Yep.
Yeah. So before we wrap it up today, Stephen, I think we got about half of Andrea's questions covered. What should we tell people who are interested in this? This is clearly kind of early in AI being adopted. And we're talking about AI because we built this new engagement metric data that we're showing you specifically to be used in these new tabular data models, just because that correlation analysis is just so powerful.
Hmm.
It's not just listing data; it's the rest of it that really makes the advice come out.
Sure. So I hope agents they change from passively trying to consume data to questioning it, right? To actively questioning their data. So if they do nothing else, to start asking on the reports you give them within like their Claude or the Chat GPT, why is this listing outperforming? Why is my click through rate on Zillow lower than the market average?
Right.
Why aren't my cold listings 97 days on market right now?
Yeah,
Um,
I heard maybe it was Brian Baero from Thousand Watt the other day. I think it was Brian. He was saying that previously unanswerable questions, things you just couldn't know,
yeah,
not all of those things are unanswerable anymore.
yeah,
And I have to stop and think to try and rewind. 10 years and take all that, I don't know, disappointment out of my experience, where I just ran into barriers like I'm just not going to be able to know that. So I'm going to go a different direction. Well, let's revisit those. And,
Mhm.
we actually can know things like, is the price that we just proposed being adopted by the market? Is that the best photo? Is that the best narrative? And, of course, compared to all their other ones is the only thing that tells you that. That's what I want to just underline what you just said. Like you can just ask with this data all loaded up. You can say, why is my listing at 92 days? And the insight that comes out is pretty remarkable.
Yeah. I mean, you guys are trailblazing, and it's critical right now, and I think this is what the industry needs, and you're changing the narrative from, like, subjective to quantifiable, and, yeah, it's been amazing to be a part of this. Thank you.
Yeah, super fun. I hope to be able to do that again. I mean, we this was kind of an experiment and it was kind of expensive, but we're going to try to do it again because I think it was, let's talk about value, not cost. I
Yeah.
I think we got value out of it. I think my 100 brokers did. They're saying that not to me anyway. So we'll be in touch. I hope we get to do it again before the big PropTechSouth.com event on November 11th. We're trying to kind of roll some momentum into that and maybe having some of these vendors. We haven't talked about those guys. There was Tuesday, OcuCell, Real Reports, and the new startup from here in town, Easy Digs. And those guys all use this engagement metric data to make their products better and
Mm,
demonstrated that night. And it was super interesting to see where all those guys are going because they have access to this data because our subscriber is using it. So it's our subscriber who gets the data just through that product portal.
mm. Yeah, and it's interesting to see it's gonna be very interesting to see how all the vendors that, you currently offer start leveraging that data. And, my mind just, like, explodes every day when I'm working with you and you're sending me data points. I'm like, "Man, I can use it for this or for that or this." But, yeah, I'm so excited to see how this data transforms the business, and I think you're gonna see a lot of different companies sprouting out that could
Mm.
use this data.
Yeah, I
I'm
think so too. A
excited.
wave of startups. I'm just watching for it.
Yep,
That
yep.
just got to happen. Well, thanks again, Stephen. Glad we could get together today. And that was Stephen McCloskey. And we'll put how to talk to Stephen in the comments here of the podcast. But hope to see you on one in the future. Thanks, man, for joining us today.
Alright, yeah, thank you.